This reading picks up in Chapter 10 on page 199 at the very bottom, literally the last 2 lines. No Negroes in my environment had ever thought of organizing, no matter in how orderly a fashion, and petitioning their white employers for higher wages. The very thought would have been terrifying to them, and they knew that the whites would have retaliated with swift brutality. So, pretending to conform to the laws of the whites, grinning and bowing, they let their fingers stick to what they could touch, and the whites seemed to like it. But I, who stole nothing, who wanted to look them straight in the face, who wanted to talk and act like a man, inspired fear in them. The Southern whites would rather have had Negroes who stole work for them than Negroes who knew, however dimly, the worth of their own humanity. Hence, whites placed a premium upon black deceit. They encouraged irresponsibility, and their rewards were bestowed upon us blacks in the degree that we can make them feel safe and superior. My objections to stealing were not moral. I did not approve of it because I knew that, in the long run, it was futile, that it was not an effective way to alter one's relationship to one's environment. Then how could I change my relationship to my environment? Almost my entire salary went to feed the eternally hungry stomachs at home. If I saved $1 a week, it would take me 2 years to amass $100, the amount which for some reason I had decided was necessary to stake me in a strange city. And God knows anything could happen to me in 2 years. I did not know when I would be thrown into a situation where I would say the wrong word to the wrong white man and find myself in trouble. And above all, I wanted to avoid trouble, for I feared that if I clashed with whites, I would lose control of my emotions and spill out words that would be my sentence of death. Time was not on my side, and I had to make some move. Often, when perplexed, I longed to be like the smiling, lazy, forgetful black boys in the noisy hotel locker rooms, with no torrential conflicts to resolve. Many times I grew weary of the secret burden I carried, and I longed to cast it down, either in action or in resignation. But I was not made to be a resigned man, and I had only a limited choice of actions, and I was afraid of all of them. A new anxiety was created in me by my desire to leave quickly. I had now seen at close quarters the haughty white men who made the laws, and I had seen how they acted, and how they regarded black people, how they regarded me, and I no longer felt bound by the laws which whites and blacks were supposed to obey in common. I was outside those laws. The white people had told me so. Now, when I thought of ways to escape from my environment, I no longer felt the inner restraint that would have made stealing impossible, and this new freedom made me lonely and afraid. My feelings became divided. In spite of myself, I would dream of a locked cupboard in a nearby neighbor's house where a gun was kept. If I stole it, how much would it bring? When the yearning to leave would become strong in me, I could not keep out of my mind the image of a storehouse at a nearby Negro college that held huge cans of preserved fruits. Yet fear kept me from making any move. The idea of stealing floated tentatively in me. My inability to adjust myself to the white world had already shattered a part of my structure of my personality, and had broken down the inner barriers to crime. The only thing that now stood in the way was lack of immediate opportunity, a final push of circumstance, and that came. I was promoted to bellboy, which meant a small increase in income, but I soon learned that the substantial money came from bootlegging liquor to the white prostitutes in the hotel. The other bellboys were taking these risks, and I fell in. I learned how to walk past a white policeman with contraband upon my hip, sauntering, whistling like a nigger ought to whistle when he is innocent. The extra dollars were coming in but slowly. How could I get my hands on more money before I was caught and sent to jail for some trivial misdemeanor? If I were going to violate the law, then I ought to get something out of it. My larcenous aims were modest. $100 would give me temporarily more freedom of movement than I had ever known in my whole life. I watched and waited, living with the thought. While waiting for my chance to grab and run, I grew used to seeing the white prostitutes naked upon their beds, sitting nude upon their rooms, or about their rooms, and I learned new modes of behavior, new rules in how to live the Jim Crow life. It was presumed that we black boys took their nakedness for granted, that it startled us no more than a blue vase or a red rug. Our presence awoke in them no sense of shame whatever, for we blacks were not considered human anyway. If they were alone, I would steal sidelong glances at them, but if they were receiving men, not a flicker of my eyelids would show. A huge snowy-skinned blonde took a room on my floor, and one night she rang for service, and I went to wait upon her. She was in bed with a thick-set man. Both were nude and uncovered. She said that she'd wanted some liquor and slid out of bed and waddled across the floor to get her money from the dresser drawer. Without realizing it, I watched her. "Nigger, what in the hell are you looking at?" the white man asked, raising himself upon his elbows. "Nothing, sir," I answered, looking suddenly miles deep into the blank wall of the room. "Keep your eyes where they belong if you want to be healthy." "Yes, sir." I would have continued at the hotel until I left had not a short cut presented itself. One of the boys at the hotel whispered to me one night that the only local Negro movie house wanted a boy to take tickets at the door. "You ain't never been in jail, is you?" he asked me. "Not yet," I answered. "Then you can get the job," he said. "I'd take it, but I done 6 months and they know me." "What's the catch?" "The girl who sells tickets is using a system," he explained. "If you get the job, you can make some good gravy." If I stole, I would have a chance to head northward quickly. If I remained barely honest, piddling with pints of bootleg liquor, I merely prolonged my stay, increasing my chances of being caught, exposed myself to the possibility of saying the wrong word or doing the wrong thing, and paying a penalty that I dare not think of. The temptation to venture into crime was too strong, and I decided to work quickly, taking whatever was in sight, amass a wad of money, and flee. I knew that others had tried it before me and had failed, but I was hoping to be lucky. My chances for getting the job were good. I had no past record of stealing or violating the laws, and when I presented myself to the Jewish proprietor of the movie house, I was immediately accepted. The next day I reported for duty and began taking tickets, and the boss man warned me. "Now look, I'll be honest with you if you'll be honest with me. I don't know who's honest around this joint and who isn't, but if you are honest, then the rest are bound to be. All tickets will pass through your hands. There can be no stealing unless you steal." I gave him a pledge of my honesty, feeling absolutely no qualms about what I intended to do. He was white, and I could never do to him what he and his kind had done to me. Therefore, I reasoned, stealing was not a violation of my ethics, but of his. I felt that things were rigged in his favor, and any action I took to circumvent his scheme of life was justified. Yet I had not convinced myself. During the first afternoon, the Negro girl in the ticket office watched me closely, and I knew that she was sizing me up, trying to determine when it would be safe to break me into her graft. I waited, leaving it to her to make the first move. I was supposed to drop each ticket that I took from a customer into a metal receptacle. Occasionally the boss would go to the ticket window and look at the serial number on the roll of unsold tickets, and then compare that number with the number on the last ticket I had dropped into the receptacle. The boss continued his watchfulness for days, and then began to observe me from across the street, and finally he absented himself for long intervals. Attention as high as that I had known when the white men had driven me from the job at the optician's returned to live in me. But I had learned to master a great deal of tension now. I had developed slowly and painfully a capacity to contain it within myself without betraying it in any way. Had this not been true, the mere thought of stealing and the risk involved, the inner distress, would have so upset me that I would have been in no state of mind to calculate coldly, would have made me so panicky that I would have been afraid to steal at all. But my inner resistance had been blasted. I felt that I had been emotionally cast out of the world, had been made to live outside the normal processes of life, had been conditioned in feeling against something daily, had become accustomed to living on the side of those who watched and waited. While I was eating supper in a nearby cafe one night, a strange Negro man walked in and sat beside me. "Hello, Richard," he said. "Hello," I said. "I don't think I know you." "But I know you," he said, smiling. Was he one of the boss's spies? "How do you know me?" I asked. "I'm Tell's friend," he said, naming the girl who sold the tickets at the movie. I looked at him searchingly. Was he telling me the truth, or was he trying to trap me for the boss? I was already thinking and feeling like a criminal, distrusting everybody. "We start tonight," he said. "What?" I asked, still not admitting that I knew what he was talking about. "Don't be scared. The boss trusts you. He's gone to see some friends, and somebody's watching him, and if he starts back to the movie, they'll phone us," he said. I could not eat my food. It lay cold upon the plate, and sweat ran down from my armpits. "It'll work this way," he explained in a low, smooth tone. "A guy'll come to you and ask for a match. You give him 5 tickets that you'll hold out of the box, see? We'll give you the signal when to start holding out. The guy'll give the tickets to Tell. She'll resell them all at once, when a crowd is buying at the rush hour. You get it?" I did not answer. I knew that if I were caught I would go to the chain gang. But was not my life already a kind of chain gang? What really did I have to lose? "Are you with us?" he asked. I still did not answer. He rose and clapped me on the shoulder and left. I trembled as I went back to the theater. Anything might happen, but I was used to that. Had I not felt that same sensation when I lay on the ground and the white man towered over me, telling me that I was a lucky nigger? Had I not felt it when I walked home from the optical company that morning with my job gone? Had I not felt it when I walked down the hallway of the hotel with the night watchman pointing a gun at my back? Had I not felt it all a million times before? I took the tickets with sweaty fingers, and I waited. I was gambling, freedom or the chain gang. There were times when I felt that I could not breathe. I looked up and down the street, and the boss was not in sight. Was this a trap? If it were, I would disgrace my family. Would not all of them say that my attitude had been leading to this all along? Would they not rake up the past and find clues that had led to my fate? The man I had met in the cafe came through the door and put a ticket in my hand. "There's a crowd at the box office," he whispered. "Save 10, not 5. Start with this one." Well, here goes, I thought. He gave me the ticket and sat looking at the moving shadows upon the screen. I held on to the ticket and my body grew tense, hot as fire, but I was used to that too. Time crawled through the cells of my brain and my muscles ached. I discovered that crime means suffering. The crowd came in and gave me more tickets, and I kept 10 of them tucked into my moist palm. No sooner had the crowd thinned than a black boy with a cigarette jutting from his mouth came up to me. "Got a match?" With a slow movement, I gave him the tickets. He went out, and I kept the door cracked and watched. He went to the ticket office and laid down a coin, and I saw him slip the tickets to the girl. Yes, the boy was honest. The girl shot me a quick smile, and I went back inside. A few moments later, the same tickets were handed to me by other customers. We worked it for a week, and after the money was split 4 ways, I had $50. Freedom was almost within my grasp. Ought I risk any more? I dropped the hint to tell his friend that maybe I would quit. It was a casual hint to test him out. He grew violently angry, and I quickly consented to stay, fearing that someone might turn me in for revenge or to get me out of the way so that another and more pliable boy could have my place. I was dealing with cagey people, and I would be cagey. I went through another week. Late one night I resolved to make that week the last. The gun in the neighbor's house came to my mind, and the cans of fruit preserves in the storehouse of the college. If I stole them and sold them, I would have enough to tide me over in Memphis until I could get a job, work, save, and go north. I crept from bed and found the neighbor's house empty. I looked about, and all was quiet. My heart beat so fast that it ached, and I forced a window with a screwdriver and entered and took the gun. I slipped it in my shirt and returned home, and when I took it out to look at it, it was wet with sweat. I pawned it under an assumed name. The following night, I rounded up 2 boys whom I knew to be ready for adventure. We broke into the college storehouse and lugged out cans of fruit preserves and sold them to restaurants. Meanwhile, I bought clothes, shoes, a cardboard suitcase, all of which I hid at home. Saturday night came, and I sent word to the boss that I was sick, and Uncle Tom was upstairs. Granny and Aunt Addie were at church, and my brother was sleeping. My mother sat in her rocking chair humming to herself, and I packed my suitcase and went to her. "Mama, I'm going away," I whispered. "Oh, no," she protested. "I've got to, Mama. I can't live this way." "You're not running away from something you've done." "I'll send for you, Mama." "I'll be all right. Take care of yourself, and send for me quickly. I'm not happy here," she said. "I'm sorry for all those long years, Mama, but I could not have helped it." I kissed her, and she cried. "Be quiet, Mama. I'm all right." I went out the back way and walked a quarter of a mile to the railroad tracks. It began to rain as I tramped down the cross ties toward town. I reached the station soaked to the skin, and I bought my ticket and then went hurriedly to the corner of the block in which the movie house stood. Yes, the boy was there, taking the tickets himself. I returned to the station and waited for my train, my eyes watching the crowd. An hour later I was sitting in a Jim Crow coach, speeding northward, making the first lap of my journey to a land where I could live with a little less fear. Slowly the burden I had carried for many months lifted somehow. My cheeks itched, and when I scratched them I found tears. In that moment I understood the pain that accompanied crime, and I hoped that I would never have to feel it again. I never did feel it again, for I never stole again, and what kept me from it was the knowledge that for me, crime carried its own punishment. Well, it's my life, I told myself. I'll see now what I can make of it.